Good evening and welcome. I'm your host, and I'm Bob Pace. I'd like to welcome you to my podcast. The podcast is about fighting CPS and how to get your children back. Stop taking our children. Now, CPS stands for the Child Protection Services, and it's a arm of the social services that deals with protection of our children and the family that's broken apart is brought back together. It's called family unification. Now, Child Protective Service is supposed to protect our kids from abuse and from neglect. And it's very important to understand those words abuse and neglect. Also, you need to know about family reunification. Now, I've been doing this for about 14 years fighting CPS. 3 of my years was very active where they stole my children. Yes, stole my children. CPS is illegally taking our children, child trafficking. And they use all kinds of alienation from your children, and they are very, very, very bad agency. I know this from firsthand and from over 100 people that have been a guest on my show. We had a guest scheduled tonight, but they couldn't make it for whatever reason, so hopefully they'll schedule another one again. Now, there's several ways you can interact with this show. This show is found on Facebook. If you look up Bob Pace Fighting CPS or Fighting CPS, you'll come across this show. And it's a live broadcast, and it's transmitted from Southern California. And I broadcast twice a day, once at 10 o'clock in the morning and another time at 7 o'clock at night. It's for 1 hour. It's on Pacific Standard Time. There's one exception. On Sunday, I start a half an hour later. There may be times from week to week or month to month that I may change the time a little bit. But most of the time, it's Saturday morning and evening at 10 a.m. and 7 p.m., 1 hour Pacific Standard Time. Now, if you find this show and you're one of our guests right now listening, you probably are going to find some information that hopefully will help you and your family. Get your family back together again, because we all have hiccups in life and we're not perfect. We weren't born with a owner's manual of how to be a mother or a father or how to raise children or even how to date or socialize. We learn that from school. We learn that from interacting with people and from our parents and grandparents and so forth. So what I'm saying is that you have to be careful in CPS cases. You really do. Now, if you want to comment about anything that's going on in the show, or you want to ask a question, or you want to say something, you can text me a comment. I'll see it, and then I'll display it. All I ask you is you put your name, what city and state, and again, we reach other countries too. We reach Australia, Canada, United Kingdom, and Ghana so far. So countries are welcome as well as people in the United States. It's a worldwide problem, and there's a lot of areas that CPS is at fault at. And I know your case is probably a real bad one, and you're desperately out of money, and it's hard to fight because you need money to fight to get your kids back. Besides, texting in a comment, if you could put your city and state or country and city, also put a little something about your case, like what children involved, like 3 girls, 2 boys. It's from 2 different CPS cases going through a custody battle. What's your partnership like? Are you married? Do you have a spouse? Are you just cohabiting together? Or is there just only a biological father or biological mother? So if you put that information, and then what were your original allegations, and then I can try to help you. I'm not an attorney, but I have 14 years experience with CPS, and I've been talking to people and try to convey what they find out to pass on to you all. Now, if you'd like to be a guest on my show, I'd love to have you. The There's several ways you can be a guest. One, you could call in at 626-698-0990. That's my office number. That will reach me and I can put you on speakerphone. That's 626-698-0990. And I can put you on, and that way you can tell me about your case. I think it gets a little boring here in my case night after night or morning after morning. So I like to have people scheduled as a case here. I do try to talk about other topics and so forth. If you aren't ready to talk on the show, would like to talk a later date, I have another number you can call in, 888-888-6582. That's my other office phone, and when you call in there, tell the people that answer the phone that Bob Pace sent you, and you want to be on one of his 14 shows: Friday morning, Friday night, Wednesday morning, Wednesday night, etc. So there are 14 shows to pick from, and then you'll be in touch with the producer, and they'll tell you what you need to do. You can also, if you don't want a phone, you can also send an email to our producer, Grace, at vincentwdavis.com. You write her, tell her that you want to be on the show, what day, and then she'll take care of it and send you a link so you can be on the show. Now, if you're on the show, you be live like me as a camera. If you call in right now, you'll be live on voice only, but you won't be able to see you in there. So there's several ways you can interact. You can do comments, you can call in to be a guest, or you can schedule a time to be a guest. Now, I want to get into the first rule here, and I tell you this every time on there. The most important rule, the first rule, is you need to hire an attorney. This is very critical stuff, and you need to have someone who's knowledgeable and that knows their way around CPS and dependency court. This is dependency court, family court, juvenile court. It's a part of the Superior Court. Superior Court has rooms for traffic citations and then rooms for criminal cases and so forth. This is a dependency matter, so it's going to be held in dependency court. And so this rule number one is so important. It's like if you're going in for open heart surgery, you're going to get yourself a doctor. You're not going to try to have a lay person or a general doctor do open heart surgery. You need someone who's a specialist. You need someone that has the knowledge and the go-between. This is very complex, social services, and what makes it worse, they are out after you. They are not a fair agency to talk to. There's a lot of deception and a lot of lies, and they use the police to enforce what they feel that they must. CPS is a nasty organization. That's all I can tell you. They're not accountable for their actions. They're not transparent. They're not your friend. The social workers are very immature, don't have a college education, and they don't need a certificate or license to practice what they're practicing. They also think they're clinical therapists, and they know how to tell a parent that is not has mental issues or they want to prescribe a drug. I'm telling you that these are these are child traffickers, the same ones that illegal steal the children and send them overseas as slaves and prostitutes. Here, CPS wants to make money. They make money several ways. If they get custody of your child, they get paid by the state and federal, and I'm talking big bucks, over $20,000 per person per child per month. I mean, that is per month, and that adds up to a lot in no time if you have 100 children in custody. On top of that, they can take your Social Security benefits. If one of your partners dies, they can take death penalties. They can do all kinds of things to make a nightmare. I just found that out recently. But they can take those funds and grab those funds from you, and then Social Security will come back and ask you to repay those funds. So I'm telling you, they're really bad there. Now, rule number two, I'm telling you, is you got to take notes. You're not going to remember all this, and you got to write down the date and time and what people were involved. At the time of the incident. You have this incident taking place where a child is taken from you, and then you have a social worker or a policeman or code enforcement or other people around, and you want to write that down in your notebook. So you write down the date and time, the people that were there at the incident, then you want to write down what the incident is. They went into my house and they saw this and this and that, or they took my child away. Whatever the incident is, you write it down. Anything related to CPS, you write it down. Then you want to do the outcome of the incident. You may not know that right away. It may take you weeks, or months, or even years to um, answer that question. What was about to conclude the incident? So rule number two is get that notebook going. Now, rule number three, I'm telling you that, is that you don't want to talk to social workers. You don't want to talk to the police. You don't allow them in your home. And you don't want them taking your children. You just have to be nice to them. You just say, no, thank you. You're not coming to my home. My lawyer will contact you. That's all you have to say. Or, no, it's yes, no answers is all you want to say. You want to be respectful to them, but tell them that your attorney will give you direction. They're going to try to scare you, but you need to talk to an attorney. They will tell you what to say, what not to say, and whether they visit. Also, if an attorney is present at your home inspection, that would really behoove you to be really good about it. Because what CPS does is they're going to try to find anything they can use against you. You see, now, if they have a warrant, they can enter your home. Either the police have this warrant. This warrant is a court order form that's signed by a judge that specifically says they can come into your home and what the allegations are, the name of the person they want to investigate, and what they're looking for. That has to be on there. Same thing goes for taking a child. That goes for the police. The police have to have a warrant too. And it's something that protects your rights. You have constitutional rights that you got to be aware of. You have constitutional rights, and you don't want them violated or anything on there. Now, allegations are something that comes in the form of a phone call by a layperson or a professional. It could be from a teacher, a fireman, a policeman, a nurse, a doctor, whatever, that they know something like maybe the child has burnt fingers, or maybe the child looks really sad or depressed, or maybe the child is not in all his clothes, or maybe he's dirty. Those are things professionals have to report by law, their job. Any professional that deals with children has to, by law, if they're suspected child abuse or neglect, they have to inspect them. Now, the other kind of individual is a layperson. That could be a relative, a family friend. It's somebody that's not a professional. And that one, we have a lot of cases where that these lay people are making up stories to get back at parents to get away from their kids. They are notorious. In my case, I had for 5 years investigation going on by my in-laws, and they were saying ridiculous things that weren't true, and I had to constantly answer the social worker. In fact, I let them into my home, which is a big mistake, but in the beginning there was nothing to find in the home. But anyway, those two types of individuals will make allegations, and when the allegations come in, social workers have to respond within 24 hours. They have to start their investigation. Also assume the allegations are true. And that's really the tough part. If the allegations are really true or not. It's it's you are guilty and you have to prove you're innocent. It isn't like other courts of law where you're innocent till you're proven guilty. So, with that being said, um, you gotta be careful. That's why you need that attorney. That's rule number one. That's why you need it. So, um, um,
Drummond is feeling better than ever, and she's now revealing how she shed 43 pounds.
Want to hear my... Crystal Candelario, the 32-year-old Cleveland mom, facing multiple charges in her daughter's death after allegedly leaving the 16-month-old girl home alone to go on...
yeah, I was looking at some YouTube videos of the horror stories of CPS. There are a lot of horror stories out there, and it is necessary for us to protect our children. CPS is necessary. The sad part is, in my case, and the people I've talked to across the country, it's been just the opposite. They're strictly there to make money, and they do steal your children, and they do make your life hell. And that is the sad part about it. I'm really sad to say that because any of you that have been involved in CPS probably know what I'm talking about. So, while the allegations are going on, you need to make sure that you talk to your attorney and he has a game plan, as what he is. This particular podcast is sponsored by Vincent W. Davis and Associates. It's a law firm in Southern California, and they have many lawyers that help out with legal problems that people may have. The one that you want is a dependency lawyer, a family law lawyer. And we have one. It's Vincent W. Davis. He's a professional. He has many, many years of fighting CPS and getting the kids back. He has won fighting CPS. He also has sued CPS uh, as a civil lawsuit because your civil rights or your constitutional rights are sometimes violated. And so he has able to do that. Also, he's a trial attorney. He works in Southern California, but he'll go to Northern California and all the other states. So he has worked in other states. A couple weeks ago, he's in Oklahoma. So I do know that he's trying to help out, and people do know about him. Look him up. There's a lot of things about him. Now, if you want to get that attorney, you have to go no further than call 888-888-6582 and schedule a consultation with him. His rates are very reasonable, and for a short time of consultation, there'll be very affordable rates. And what you want to do is you call in at 888-888-6582 and say, I want to schedule a consultation with Mr. Davis. You also tell him that Bob Pace sent you, and then when you schedule your time with Mr. Davis, you tell him that Bob Pace sent you. And if you talk to him, you may say, I want this guy, and you may have to take a loan from family and friends or a credit line on your house, or maybe there's some other way, your savings, or it is. I used up all my money to pay him to help me fight to get my children back. I lost one girl, but I got my two boys back. And that's the sad thing. It's really complicated. What I know now, if I knew, 2015 when they got active and took my children through deception, I would not have lost my children or gone through 3 years of hell. Probably would have been a lot cheaper. So do that consultation. You can't go wrong. And it's very reasonably priced. And so call in and schedule that time with Mr. Davis. That rule number one. So people have asked me, how long does this CPS case last? Well, in the handbook, it says usually 48 days. How they come up with 48 days, I don't know, but they say usually that is. Well, in my case, mine lasted 3 years. In other people cases, maybe 8 years. It all depends on what's happening with you and what your allegations are, and whether the classes you take, whatever you do to make yourself right again, would help with the family get back together. You know, it's very, very important that you know CPS recognizes that you're a family and you need to get that family back together. It's wrong when they sit there and they alienate your children uh, from you as parents. Now, alienation is illegal. Alienation is used a lot in custody lawsuits where one parent is going against the other parent and they try to alienate the kids from them to make the parent look bad. That's against the law. And CPS does alienate the parents from the kids. In our case, we never did see the kids on a meeting to talk. We visited them. We were able to do visitations, but you're not allowed to talk about the case. They don't know what mom and dad are doing. You don't know what the kids are doing. In fact, they went from a shelter to a group home, and in the group home, they were taught not to love their parents, not to show any emotions. CPS isn't interested in bringing the families back together. They don't. They abuse the children in care. There's a lot of abuse goes on. Another form of shelter is foster care, where some foster care people have been supposedly trained and want to take care of children, maybe adopt them. But my son was harmed in foster care, and I know our daughter was brainwashed to the point where she decided that, oh, they'll give me a Disneyland pass. Dad can't do that because he lost his job. So, and that's hard with teenagers. Teenagers are a lot harder than young ones. Young ones have problems of separation, but the teenagers kind of like when their parents look bad because then they could do a lot of things like stay up late, get a lot of extra stuff and everything. And so it's sad, but it's true. So it's really hard with teenagers. Our daughter was so brainwashed that she divorced her parents and she sealed her birth certificate and she changed her name. Now that's not our daughter. We knew our daughter. That had to be done by my in-laws, my wife's family, and it had to be done by CPS and the foster care people making promises and things like that. And our daughter wasn't too smart to know the difference. I think she does deep inside love her mom and dad still, but when she sealed her birth certificate, like you don't even know the parents she's born with, that's wrong. That whole thing is wrong. The whole picture is really, really wrong. So that was hard on us. That was really hard on us. Now, there's a topic here that was handed to me by my producer, which I think is a good topic. And it was called let me see if I can find it here. I had it. Okay. That I should talk about parents that CPS rightfully intervened and but didn't. Now, there are cases where CPS should have intervened. Like we do have cases where there's physical abuse going on with a baby who's crying all the time and the father slams the child against the wall or he uses excessive corporate punishment and belts the child. And a little 2 year old or a little 1 year old and a baby infant, their body isn't used to that kind of trauma. And when they're really young, you have to go with the crime because their needs. They need their diaper change, they need food, or they need attention. That's why a baby cries. A baby, it's a natural thing. Now, I know you parents are not born with um, a manual about how to take care of children or how to raise children. We all not born it. We learn from our parents and our grandparents about how to raise children, how to take care of them. We may learn from books we read or classes we've taken. There's a lot of great parenting classes out there that are given at the community colleges that you could take, and they're at no charge, and some have very nominal charge. But one of the programs that I think you should look into, I think everybody has this issue, is anger management. We all get anger over something. And, that's why a parent will hurt a child. He's angry because the crying's too much. The crying's too much. And so he gets anger. And so with the anger, he loses his temper, he harms the child. Now, if you take an anger management class, they tell you that you learn things like when you get upset with something, instead of yelling about it or cussing at it or be angry about it, you take a time out. You are got to be strong enough to take a time out, walk somewhere, and let off your steam and think it out. Then come back to it. We do timeouts with children all the time, and that's a lot better than corporate punishment. It makes them think about it and what um, what you um, say will harm a child. You see, if you have anger problems, anger issue, or let's say you go a step further, you and your spouse are having a battle and you do physically alterations against each other, that's a no-no. You can't be physical with your spouse. That's domestic violence. That's physical domestic violence. There's also verbal domestic violence, and that's arguing among parents in front of your children. It hurts the child. The child now has to force to pick one or the other, and it's really hard on them. It really is, because you should not put a child in that position. A child is very, very precious. You all love children. Everybody I've talked to the show have been really good about their children. It's just that they have some hiccups and they need to do family reunification. I got news for you. My CPS didn't. And I love to have someone come on here that's a CP social worker, CPS social worker, or somebody that had a good case and said it went really great and this is what I want to talk to you about. So, with that being said, the anger management class will show you how to control your emotions. And you can always get back to it. See, we have anger problems at work where we work our place of employment. We don't like what the boss said about us. Just something like that. Well, you got to do the same thing there. You got to take a time out. You can't hit your boss. You can't argue. You can respectfully disagree and you can talk about it, but sometimes you have to back away and come back to it later. So, anger management and timeouts is used in all areas of our social life out there. And um, that's one of the programs that you need to look at, because you don't want to have verbal abuse taking place, because that will harm your child. That will harm your child. Now, something about physical abuse is where an act other than an injury at, let's say, a sporting event the child did or something like that, is because a parent got carried away, either pulling them up, by the arm, or hitting a child or thing like that. That is wrong. You don't really want to do that uh, in that kind of a situation. Now, the Child Protection Services, and it may be different names in different counties, different cities, different states, or what it is. They're the government agency that's there supposed to protect the children. Now, what does it mean when CPS red flags you? A red flag from CPS indicates the agency has identified concerns during an investigation that requires further attention. This could include potential abuse, neglect, or other issues comprised of child's safety and well being. Now, someone asked me, what is worse, physical abuse or neglect? Is neglect worse than abuse? It's certainly difficult to compare neglect and abuse because, at their most extreme, both can cause serious harms or death. Even when they do not, either could have profound effects on a person's mental health. Now, negligent abuse is the ongoing failure to meet a child's basic needs, the most common form of child abuse. A child might be left hungry or dirty or with proper clothing, shelter, supervision, or health care. That can put children and young people in danger. Now, physical neglect, not abuse, physical neglect occurs when a parent or guardian custodian, someone who's taking care of the children, fails to provide for a child's basic needs like food, clothing, shelter, education, medical care, supervision, and abandonment. That is physical neglect. What always comes up too sometimes as parents, can CPS use your past against you? It's very hard to hide information just because something occurred in another state. Evidence of your past is relevant in a CPS case. So you have to be very careful about previous CPS case because they'll look it up and they'll use it against you. They'll use it against you. Now, example of something are not considered concerning for possible physical abuse is like linear red marks on the cheeks, injuries with unconvincing explanations, injuries delay in seeking treatment, are not considered concerning for possibly physical abuse. Bruise on the shins, knees, or forehead can be concerned for possible physical use. Now, abuse is the most difficult to prove. Verbal abuse refers to regular and consistent belittling, name calling, labeling, or ridicule of a person, but also includes spoken threats. It's the most difficult form of abuse to prove because it does not leave physical scars, evidence, but it has nonetheless very hurtful. It's the mental hurt of verbal abuse. There's no question about that. Now, studies have shown that emotional abuse may be the most damaging form of maltreatment causing adverse development consequences equivalent to or more severe than those of forms of, of abuse. Now, what four things must be proven when someone is to be considered negligence? This is really important to know because you're going to be caught in this situation or already have. Proven negligence, most civil lawsuits for injuries allege the wrongdoer was negligence. To win in a negligence lawsuit, the victim must establish four elements. The wrongdoer owed a duty to the victim. The wrongdoer owed a duty to the victim. The wrongdoer breached the duty. The breach caused the injury, and the victim suffered damages. Some people ask me, is a messy house child is a messy house called child neglect? A messy house is not grown for removal. And so I had a house, I had a home, and I had lost my job through no fault of my own. I had other things going in my perfect storm. I had my retirement cut in half. I lost all that. I had a predatory loan. I was laid off from work. And then CPS was investigating. And then I had another thing. My parents were dying, and I had their belongings. Now, my house wasn't dirty. My house was cluttered with my parents' belongings, and they thought I was neglect. And I did not know that. But a messy house is not grounds for removal. A dirty house that presents a danger to the child is grounds for removal. Because if you have rats infestations and you have, uh, refrigerator that's so moldy and stuff, that is grounds for removal. The age of a child makes a difference in these cases too. Now, you're not supposed to let them in your home unless they have a search warrant. But if you do let them in the house, this is what they're going to do. They typically will look for hazards within reach of the child. So if you're like a young child, there's matches laid on a table that is hazardous, they'll take your children away. Illegal drugs or alcohol located in an area that a child could reach. Your alcohol should be locked up. Illegal drugs should not be there. Everything is to be locked up. They have to be 21 to do drugs or alcohol. Now, if you're the target of investigation, you're going to want to make the home presentable, clean, and kid friendly. That's something that you need to have there. So, as parents, you need to do that. So, each state has different days. Like I mentioned, 48 days. That was California. New York, it's 60 days. You can find that out. That all it is a report to indicate or unfounded or not. The law requires CPS to provide written notes to the parents or other subjects of the report concerning the rights accorded to them by the New York State Social Service Law. California is 48 days. Now, I'm going to mention this about New York. I brought that up because we've had on the show. But what CPS cannot do in New York, they cannot forcefully enter your home. Well, that's true in California. CPS cannot enter a home without permission unless they have obtained a court order. That's the warrant. They cannot compel an individual to take a drug test. CPS cannot request that an individual undergo a drug test, but they can only require a parent to do so with a court order. So, you really need to do that one and get an attorney and let that attorney direct you because you're second guessing CPS. And if CPS is corrupt, as I found it they be, then it's really going to be a hard time. Now, one thing parents have asked me, what age can a child stay home alone? Well, in New York, there's no set law in which a child can leave a child home. The parent is responsible for deciding whether or not the child is mature enough and responsible enough to understand the circumstances and take care of him or herself. Now, there was that movie Home Alone about the boy left in there, and he had these burglars that came in there and so forth. I don't know how old the boy was depicted in that home, but he looked like he was probably 8 or 9 years old, maybe 10. And so in New York, there's no age. In California, I don't know. I would have to look up the California law there. So you need to look up a lot of these things here. Everything you can Google on the internet about CPS. There's so much. Now, in New York, it says, how long can a father be absent and lose his rights in New York? Permanent neglect a child for at least 12 months by failing for maintaining contact with the child or plan for the future child. Legally abandoning the child for at least 6 months. Severe repayment. So it's permanent at 12 and it starts being abandoned at 6 months. And so, you know, if there is, that's one thing as parents, um, you are both responsible to raise your kids. It isn't one of the others. So many parents that are single parents, and it's hard on them to be a single parent. There was one case I was talking to. A father had lost his wife. She died. He's trying to take care of his kids, and he went to live in a tent in Alaska to be close to his kids. It was so cold, but he wanted to be there for his kids. So what I'm saying is that you need to um, be a full-time parent with your kids. They need a mom and a dad. If you're not married in your partnership, they still need both parents. Also, if you have a child that you're not married and you just had the child there, that both parents need to be around. So many deadbeat dads leave their wife, or not the wife, but leave the woman that they made love to when she's pregnant. They want nothing to do with the child. That's wrong. That's a no-no. Everybody, I mean, you should be responsible for that. That should never be something that it's very, very hard when, your children are taken a case. In my case, it was traumatic. For 5 years, they kept trying to find something wrong with my home or something there, and they couldn't. So this time, what they did, and I'm not living in my house the last couple of those years because I have my parents' belongings, and it was none of their business anyway. And so that's why they wanted to get in my house. And so they use the old trick where they get the policeman. They get the policeman involved. When they get the policeman involved, you know what the policeman's going to do? He's going to also investigate, the detective, and then he's going to turn his information to the district attorney, who ends up filing a claim against you for a misdemeanor for child neglect or child abuse or whatever the case is. Suddenly now you got CPS get you and have a criminal case, and then CPS is going to sit back and let you fight it out with the criminal, and that may take a year or two. Meanwhile, they have your kids and they're getting money off your kids. That is really, really wrong in there. And I think that um, you need to be very careful with your kids because you don't want to have to be involved with CPS. That's the last resort. And with me, I tried to fight them through emails, meeting with the top dog, and also to see the manager or something when you like there. You see, what I found out was I did not want to believe this. At first they try to be nice to you, say, "Oh, don't worry about a thing. We do family reunification. You'll be with your kids," and blah 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 blah. That I had no idea that they're laying the framework to have my young daughter, who was 12 at the time, take away from her mom and dad. It started off, I had no visitations when she was taken from me. Why? Because supposedly, alleged, my daughter said she didn't want to see me, which I knew was not true. She saw her mother for a little bit, but then her mother got scolded all the time because she would try to talk to her daughter, and then eventually took away her visitation rights, which is wrong. That's not right. Every child needs to see a parent. It can be monitored visitations. What I really firmly believe is that if the kids are taken apart, they should meet once a week with the parents and the social workers to discuss what mom and dad are doing and what the kids are doing. It should be a face to face talk. In fact, with therapists, I think the family should have a family meeting with the mother and father and the kids. The social workers can observe, but the therapist can interact, and maybe some constructive measures can be taken out of that. I don't know. I'm not. I'm just guessing at that taking place. But it's sad. It really is so sad that there's no contact with the children when they're taken from you during the investigation. Because after the children are taken from you, there's going to be a meeting shortly, a couple days later, where they have a plan, a safety plan for where the children should be housed, how they're going to be housed, and everything. Now, we do have the ICWA, which is the Indian Child Welfare Act of 1979. That's one of the things they discuss with you. If you are American Indian by descent, you're the first, what do you call it, the first immigrants. American Indians were the first immigrant to this continent, long before the Vikings and the Europeans. But they were the first immigrant. Anyway, there are still lots of Indians left, lots of tribes and so forth. Well, they found out that the American Indian children in CPS cases were constantly being taken by CPS and their rights were not being protected. So they passed this ICWA, the Indian Child Welfare Act of 79, to ensure that if there's trouble with Indian children, the tribe will help to take care of it. That CPS must work diligently to find if the child is registered or the Indian tribe is registered with that family. And if it's not, can it be registered? They want to, because why? The Indian tribe will take the child into custody, work out the issues, and return the child. They're not into the money thing. That's not the money thing with the Indian tribe. But it's to protect our Indian children. So if you out there, that are Indian children, got to know there's a protection act called the Indian Child Welfare Act. You need to look that one up. But at that safety meeting, they're going to ask for a list of siblings. Well, in our case, my in-laws lived in another state, and my sister lived in another state, and we really didn't have much in the way of siblings living near us. So it was hard, but you want the kids to be placed in siblings. You don't want them in a shelter or a group home or foster care. You don't want them in those kind of environments because that's the other way that you're going to lose your children. If they go with your in-laws or a grandparent or some of those lines, then you'll still see your child, and it's better that way. And that's what they try to do. They try to do that, and that saves me because they're getting ready to have evidence put against you in dependency court and a plan that's going to tell you what you need to do for family reunification. Now, a lot of times they say family reunification, but they don't mean it. They do not mean it, and it's sad. It is so sad to hear that when they don't mean it. And it really hurt me and my family, and we're still hurting because of it. 14 years is a long time to be with this social service workers that don't care, don't even give it. When they came to my home, they could have said, hey, look, we'll help you with your parents' belongings. We can put it in storage and we'll pay the storage fees. No, they weren't there to help. They were looking for, they wanted me to go through hoops. They charged me and my wife, the police detective, with negligence, having objects that are too stacked too high, which they weren't, and furniture stacked that could harm the children. They were exaggerating. But they were so much interested and revengeful because for 5 years they said they couldn't find anything wrong. And now they said, oh, we found something wrong here. His parents are dying and he's got his furniture in there of his parents and belongings he's trying to disseminate out to his relatives. So they wanted to hammer me a lot, and so did the police department. So I was getting double whammy. I had criminal charges, misdemeanor criminal charges, and the same charges are being charged by the child. Oh, in the criminal matter, they added sex charges. They didn't tell you what kind of sex, but they said sex charges. We had 3 children, 3 counts of sex, 3 counts of negligence. CPS didn't find anything sexual with us, but the misdemeanor they wanted, they use that as a trade-off, meaning that they hope that you'll settle a year later. They keep hammering and hammering you. I should have stuck with it and had a trial by jury, but I wanted my kids returned home, and CPS wasn't doing anything until the criminal matter got taken care of. And so that was a really hard thing to swallow. That was a hard thing to swallow. And they also charged my wife 3 counts of sex. They wouldn't tell you what sex was, but they said, oh, sex is an awful thing. And CPS did not find in their investigation any sexual charges. They didn't try anything. But with the city, the criminal matter, they were anxious. Well, I found out later what they said to you is that, hey, we'll drop the sexual charges, we'll drop all the charges against your wife, and only you will be charged. Which I thought was a good thing. It was a bad thing later. I should never have done that. I should have had the jury trial, and I would have been found innocent of anything like that. So, I settled. Also, money had a lot to do with it because I'd already invested some money already to an attorney. I had an attorney there do it, and he said, "Well, it makes sense because it'd be cheaper, and all you have to do is admit to the misdemeanor, and we'll have it worded so it says they could be injured through neglect by the furniture stacked too hard." That's what my case was, but it was a misdemeanor, and I had to be put on probation. I had a year long of programs classes, anger management, other classes. My house is inspected. I lived apart from my kids and my wife while CPS took our kids. Um, it was terrible. I mean, I still to this day cannot believe that they did that. And then they sit there and say, "Well, we just want to settle the case and it'll go away and everything." But you get tested every week for drugs, even if you're not suspected of drugs. You get tested every week for drugs, 4 times a month, and then on top of that, you get your house inspected every week. You have these uh, probation officers in a battle fatigue come in your neighborhood and make you look like you're a criminal or something. I always told people in my neighborhood that they're my high school friends and they came by to say hi to me. So that's why they're dressed doing their job. But it is kind of sadness about that. My case was bad. It was bad to the point where I'm just so glad I had an attorney. And that rule number one is so important. I hired Vincent Davis, and he got my 2 boys back. Lost our girl because she divorced, sealed her birth certificate, and changed her name. And it was sad because it was all about money. And she could see that I didn't have a job and wasn't going to provide the things she was accustomed to. And I'm sorry when it's all about money. It should not be. Families should get together at the dining room table 1 meal a day, and it's usually the dinner time. When the father comes home from work, the kids are home from school, the mother's been taking care of the house, she prepares the meals. And the thing is, at the table, you should not have any cell phones. There's no need unless you're a security guy with the FBI or something, a president of the United States. You don't need to have a phone ready there because it can wait. You have an answer machine, so it can wait. Kids don't need to play games all the time. They can take a time out. In fact, that's what our problem is. We let our kids have too much usage of the phone. You need to take them on trips where there's no phones are really used, and you need to do outings with them and movie nights or things like that. So um, I strongly recommend that you think about that with cell phones and have a family night because it's so important for the show love to your family and talk about the days. The kids can talk about their classes they took and what they did at school. The father can talk about what he did at work. The mother can talk about what she did during the day. People need to know who's doing what and everything. It's great to have people sit there at a table and talk. But I see too many times with people with their heads down, looking at the phone, playing the games, or looking at the news, or whatever the case would be. That is wrong. So we should be doing that there. I have about 5 minutes left in the show. I'd hope that someone would have called in at 5 626 698 0990. It's too late now to take anybody in at the last minute, so I'm going to take down that phone number. I also was hoping, that person would be a guest on the show, but if you're still interested, it's 888-888-6582 and schedule a time to be on my show. Tell them that Bob Pace sent you. And don't forget that rule number 1. You need an attorney, and I recommend Vincent W. Davis. He's a fighter. He's a professional. He's a trial attorney. He knows what he's done. He's won civil cases against CPS. He's fought CPS and gotten children back. So have that consultation with him. Call in 888-888-6582. Tell him that you want to set up a consultation with Mr. Davis that Bob Pace sent you, and he'll set one up. There is a fee. It's a nominal fee for 30 minutes. And I think it's about, if I'm not mistaken, about $50. It's a really nominal fee in there. Let me see, I saw it in there. Yeah, $49.99. He includes a 30-minute consultation with Vince Davis. So for $50, you can talk to him and you go over the strategies and how to fight CPS and how to get your kids back. It's real important that you do. And if you talk to him, you'll probably want to retain him. I did. He's worth every dime. He got my kids back. So you're going to have an attorney. The public defender that they give to you at dependency court will let you down. They're not a full-time lawyer. They have over 20 cases they're trying to handle. They don't have the experience as a dependency attorney. And they're friends with social services attorneys. So with that being said, you got to be careful because the public defender, you may have to replace them a half a dozen times. And so you need to do that. A couple of things I don't want you to forget about. There's a form called a 388 petition. It's a form you use to enter new things into dependency court to change the current plan, to get your kids back. It's a petition, and you have a hearing within 30 days. And you put down like you complete all your classes, you're drug free for a year, or those kind of things. You want to get your kids back. So don't forget the petition 388. That's a real important thing to know about. So I'm going to tell you all that I'll see you tomorrow at 10 o'clock Pacific Standard Time for my next show. I'm on every day of the week, twice a week. Twice a day, every week. And that if you want to be on the show, call in 888-888-6582. And also, we have an email that you can write to the producer, Grace, at vincentwdavis.com. And she'll put you on the show, too. She's the one that's producing this show. Really hard worker there. So I want you all to wish you a very successful new year. I want to make sure it gets much happiness. Do not give up on your kids. Keep fighting for them. And try to love your children and get them back. God bless you all. Good night. And this is Bob Pace,